Hello, my name is Joshua Oliver, and I worked under Dr. Love Cope for my project, which was working with a crop physiology sensing system, or CPS for short. A CPS is essentially a unit that can be installed in a field or orchard to collect different kinds of useful environmental data. It was created to help solve the very large problem in agriculture of not having a method or system to automatically collect accurate, real time, in field data that farmers can utilize to their benefit. This data is necessary as before any further research is done or research projects are started to help solve more difficult challenges in ag, there needs to be a foundation of reliable, accurate, trusted data that can be worked with. Once developed, the CPS was first integrated to collect accurate data for heat stress management in apples, specifically when dealing with sunburned apples. Sunburn is caused by a mixture of excessive light and too high of a fruit surface temperature and can lead up to a 40% yield loss of your crop. Additionally, before the CPS, there were unreliable or harmful methods to measure fruit surface temperature, consequently meaning there wasn't enough accurate research being done to properly combat sunburn in apples at the time. However, when the CPS was developed, it was able to integrate its sensors along with a thermal imaging camera to properly calculate fruit surface temperature, and this precise data can be utilized in the future for sunburn management decision making. Additionally, down the line, the system can be potentially integrated with an irrigation system. So if the fruit surface temperature reaches a certain temperature, effective irrigation measures can automatically take place. This same kind of process and collection of accurate data can be used with the CPS for other purposes, which is what my project focused on. I had two primary objectives, the first being to demonstrate the flexibility and potential of the CPS system, and the second being to collect localized air quality data for farmers to utilize. This would also satisfy the first objective as well. Before I began work on this project, I first needed to know how a CPS works. As you can see from the background image, it uses a solar panel as its main source of power, the solar panel located behind the motivation slide, and that power then gets transferred to a battery box, which is behind the overview slide, where power can be properly, adequately dispersed and supplied to provide sufficient power to the brain of the system, or the CPS node, which is the white box you can see on this structure. The node is what I spent a majority of this project working on and is where the quote unquote magic happens. A CPS node is where the collection, storage, and management of your data occurs and is where all of the important electrical components of your system are generally stored. The box on the left is the housing for the node, which again stores all of the important electrical connections for your sensors. And on the right is what is inside the housing unit. Inside are the wires for the sensors, along with a microcontroller or an Arduino, and it can also integrate a Raspberry Pi or a microcomputer, all of which are used to either receive, store, or send the data that is being gathered from the sensors. For my specific CPS, the CPS node would be housing the parts for two weather sensors, an Atmos 41 and an Atmos 14, and an air quality sensor. The two weather sensors together incorporate 12 different weather parameters that give farmers all of the environmental information they could possibly want to know about their crops. The difference between the two is that the Atmos 41 measures more parameters than the Atmos 14. Additionally, the Atmos 41 is installed above the crop for above canopy measurements, and the Atmos 14 is installed in the middle of the canopy for in canopy measurements. Then, using code, the microcontroller asks these sensors to send it the information they are gathering, where it will then gather that information, process it correctly in a readable format, and then store it on an SD card. There were two large issues I had when working on this project. The first being the actual programming of the Arduino, as I knew nothing about it before I came to this internship. So the first challenge would be actually learning the language and syntax of Arduino, including what functions such as digital write, digital read, and delay did, and not only that, but how they interacted with the second challenge I faced, the actual hardware and electrical components of the Arduino and the sensors I was using. When I first started making these connections with these sensors to the Arduino, they were not terribly complex. However, they reached a much greater level of complexity and depth the more sensors I started to integrate and connect. Eventually, though, I was able to gain enough understanding and proficiency in Arduino to be able to create a program that asks the sensors to send it its data. It would then process and accurately format that data and then store it in an SD card. After that, the second challenge I faced was the actual housing of the CPS node. The first problem being making sure that all of the important electrical connections and that my microcontroller, along with my air quality sensor, were all stable, secure, and wouldn't get dislodged or broken from environmental or weather damage. Additionally, I had to make sure the air quality sensor had proper airflow getting to it as well. After this challenge, I had to figure out a proper power source for the node, and that meant having the correct wiring to correspond to the node as well as the amount of power to have the entire node work properly. As this photo suggests, this was solved with a solar panel, which is connected to a solar power manager, which is then charging a lithium battery, which can then supply adequate power for the microcontroller. Once this system was properly installed, I began data collection for as long as I could before my storage capacity on my SD card was reached. Additionally, I collected data from a Purple Air air quality sensor, as it is a cheap, common, community-used air quality sensor that I can compare my results to in order to test for accuracy. I was able to collect a handful of data across a period of 7 hours, with measurements being recorded every half hour, specifically measuring the data at a density of 2.5 micrograms. As you could see from this graph, the results were very accurate. And as you could see from this graph, there were only slight differences in the readings from both air quality sensors, and that would be due to either the housing of these sensors or the placement on the actual system. With these results, not only has the CPS system been shown to be a multi-use, flexible system, but also how it can be used to collect localized air quality data for beneficial purposes. One such purpose, for instance, is monitoring smoke from wildfires. With the amount of wildfires that the West Coast gets each year, this is a very realistic primary application that air quality sensors can be utilized for. Because of these wildfires, there are certain worker health regulations farmers need to follow to protect their workers if the air quality readings of outside stationed air quality sensors gets too high. These rules are determined by labor and industries, and these sensors are ran and installed by airnow.gov, a trusted website/company that LNI get their air quality readings from. However, these rules can be frustrating for farmers as there is no specific air quality readings for their area, only from the nearest air quality stations, as seen from the photo on the left. Additionally, these readings can be drastically different from station to station, especially when smoke pollution is heavy. So, in times with wildfires, are farmers supposed to follow the highest reading nearest to the area or the lowest? With the CPS system, and as this project demonstrates, irritations and challenges such as these can be mitigated.